Good afternoon, and welcome back to the Friendly Neighborhood History channel, where we bring you social studies content, social sciences, geopolitics, both past and present. This is our YouTube page. Please be sure to like and subscribe to become a Friendly Neighborhood Historian. Get notified about all the content dropping all day long, shorts, long-form videos, and things like that. And this is our final This Week in Politics video. We've been doing This Week in Politics videos since July, since the presidential race heated up. And, well, now the U.S. presidential race is officially over, and obviously the result is maybe a little shocking to some people, but very shocking to others, but perhaps not completely surprising too much when you actually think about things. And that's Donald Trump was elected the 47th president of the United States. He won in very convincing fashion, and unlike a lot of people expected, Donald Trump, who has made one of the biggest political comebacks in American history, won. And we knew on election night that he was going to win. He had a very strong, commanding performance that won all 7 of the swing states and helped bring Republicans to majorities in both the Senate and the House of his coattail effect. He overperformed in red states, got close in blue states, and swept the swing states. And so President Trump has a mandate because he has also won the popular vote this time around. And this is devastating news to Kamala Harris and her campaign. Harris gave a concession speech on Wednesday, did not address her crowd at the Naval Observatory, where the vice president lives in Washington, D.C. And so this historic election has finally come to an end, with Harris giving her concession on Wednesday, President Biden also acknowledging the results, and that Donald Trump has become the second president in American history to win 2 non-consecutive terms in the White House. The first one was this guy, Grover Cleveland. So let's look at the results a little bit and talk about what it means. Right now, and it's not completely over, but Donald Trump is winning the popular vote by over 3 million votes. He has about a 2.5% lead. He's expected to win between 1.5 to 2% in the popular vote. And I have got the map here. All of the states have been called, and most of them have well over 90%, about 99, 98% of the results in. These are like the very, very final results, and Trump got very close in some of these blue states, expanded his lead in some of the red states, and won all of the swing states, and won them all, most of them, by a convincing fashion. Now, I also have the 2020 map for comparison between Donald Trump and Joseph Robinette Biden, when Biden won 4 years ago. Of course, Biden dropped out in July due to concerns about his mental acuity, the lack of popularity with his presidency, and other questions surrounding the economy, as well as lack of support from Democrats, particularly left-wing Democrats, who are very worried about the Israel-Palestine war and the cause of the Palestinians. And Joe Biden has become the first president in 56 years to drop out of a presidential race, in the midst of it, although the primary process was not really present afterwards, as it was for Lyndon Johnson in 1968 when he dropped out. Biden did indeed drop out, and it left it to Vice President Harris, who ran a formidable campaign and gained a lot of support, with local internals saying that Biden was projected to have lost in a more convincing fashion, with Trump getting over 400 electoral votes and winning the popular vote by even more than he's going to this time. However, this is a clear mandate for former President Trump as he becomes the 47th president after being the 45th president. It's a clear mandate from the people. And we'll get into a little bit of the results, but I have the results from 2020 as comparison. So Trump, of course, the big news was that he swept the battleground states. He won Michigan. He won Wisconsin. He won Arizona. He won Nevada. He won Pennsylvania. He won Georgia. He won North Carolina. And I believe that's all of them. So Trump's victory was quite convincing in many, many ways. And we'll talk about that just a little bit in this last video of our This Week in Politics series. So votes are still being counted, but I want to show you what I mean by Trump got closer in blue states, expanded his lead in red states, and swept the battleground states. So if we look back at 2020, Trump lost the popular vote by 4.5. He lost it by just over 7 million votes. Biden set a record for popular vote. Trump actually set a record for Republicans in popular vote in 2020, and now has exceeded that, as you can see. He's nearly up to 75 million votes this year. And this year, despite the record turnout, it was not a COVID year, so Kamala Harris is about 10 million votes, or will be about 10 million, 8 million, 9 million votes short of Joseph Biden's numbers in 2020, which was, again, a record. So let me show you what I mean first. Look at California. It's obviously the most well-known blue state in the country. Biden won California by 30 points. He won it by over 5 million votes. Obviously, this was a COVID year. Turnout was higher. There were a lot of mail-in ballots, which obviously led to accusations from Trump and his team following that of election fraud, which has never been proven or confirmed. But there's a solid blue state, California, voting for Joseph Biden by over 30 points against Donald Trump 4 years ago. And here's the result from California right now. Now, there's still a lot of vote outstanding in California, but if you look at the county map, Trump has gained a lot of support in the Central Valley of California, while the coast, San Francisco, Los Angeles, San Diego, remains solidly blue. But Vice President Harris, if you look at it closely, is only winning by just over 20 points. Now, 20 points is a landslide. That's a huge win and a big win for the Democrats. And she's got about 7 million votes. She's winning by just over 2.5 million votes over Donald Trump. And that lead has expanded since Tuesday night and will continue to expand most likely. Now, California is also extremely important for the House of Representatives, which we'll talk about in a second. But basically, that's a blue state that got 10 points closer than it was last time around. And it was even closer than the first time when Hillary Clinton won it by about 23 or 24 points. Meanwhile, you look at a red state like Montana, a pretty reliably red state. Trump won it by 16 points. That's a pretty solid margin, about 100,000 votes in 2020. And it's not the biggest swing, but he won it this time by just over 20. Maybe even a better example would be Missouri. He won it by 18 this time. He won Missouri by 15 last time. So these states have swung decisively towards Trump, which has helped Republicans in those areas because there were senatorial races in both of those places. And in Montana, Tim Sheehy unseated John Tester, the Democrat, and won that seat for the Republicans. The Republicans have gained 4 Senate seats. The Democrats have lost 4. Meanwhile, in Missouri, Josh Hawley was able to win by 14 points. He only won by 6 last time around when Trump wasn't on the ballot. So Trump helped carry Republicans over the top in places like Montana, Missouri, Ohio. If you look at the president, and we'll get to Ohio in a second, but that's what we've got there. And you have a big change in those states. Now, the obvious biggest example was Texas. Trump won it by nearly 14 points. Biden got it within about 5.5 last time around. Trump only won by 600,000 votes, which sounds like a lot of votes, but it's close for Texas, being as big of a state as it is. And the Democrats were really convinced that they could turn Texas into a battleground purple state and force Republicans to spend a lot of money. Trump won there solidly by about 14 points, by about 1.5 million votes. And if you look at the Senate race, again, a critical one for the Republicans, Ted Cruz was able to win by almost 1 million votes of his own. Probably a coattail effect. And in American politics, the coattail effect is where voters who turn out to vote in presidential elections will vote for a Republican or Democratic candidate, and because they're voting for that candidate, they will vote for other Republicans and or Democrats running for the House, Senate, local elections, mayoral elections, gubernatorial elections, and so on. So the higher turnout during presidential elections allows the coattail effect where the winning candidate in a particular state, in this case mainly Donald Trump, is able to help other candidates in that state get a little bit closer. And a great example of this is in the swing state of Pennsylvania. Now, Donald Trump won Pennsylvania by about 2 points. In the Senate race, there was a very close Senate race that really hasn't been completely over, although Dave McCormick has supposedly won this, flipping it from Pennsylvania legend Bob Casey. He was able to win by about 40,000 votes. Probably, again, that coattail effect, which takes us to the swing states. Trump was in my prediction, we had Trump winning 291 to 247. He barely wins Pennsylvania, barely wins Wisconsin, barely wins Georgia, and loses Nevada and Michigan. Now, I was right about this. He barely won in Wisconsin, but he also had him winning pretty comfortably in Arizona and North Carolina. And if you look at this election, he won by 3.5 points in North Carolina, which is exactly how much he won by 8 years ago against Hillary Clinton. It's double the amount he won that state by against Joe Biden last time. And Arizona, which Biden was able to narrowly win by about 10,000 votes, Trump was able to flip back and has won in even more commanding fashion. That's not a lean margin like I had. That's a likely margin, nearly 6 points, a very strong win for Trump in Arizona. He got the senatorial candidate, Carrie Lake, close. She was running like 7 or 8 points behind her Democratic opponent, and the coattail effect helped her, but it's not going to be enough. She loses that race. The coattail effect also affects House races, as Trump's coattail effect has allowed the Republicans to gain at least 1 seat for now. The House is still uncalled, but it's looking like if the Republicans hold on to some of these seats, the pink is where they're leading, and the blue and the light blue is where the Democrats are leading, then the Republicans should be fine. For instance, there were a couple of House races in Pennsylvania that Trump was able to help the Republicans win. And let me show you what I mean there. For instance, Ryan McKenzie was able to beat Susan Wild, and Robert Benenson was able to defeat Matt Cartwright, probably because of Trump's strong turnout. Strong turnout for Trump, where he won by 2 points, which doesn't sound like a lot, but is a lot in Pennsylvania, 150,000 votes, which is double the amount Biden won it by. That's really good news for for Trump and the Republicans, as he helps carry over candidates in the Senate and the House, carry them over the finish line. They don't get as nearly a good result as he does, but he still wins. And if you look here, Biden won by 80,000 votes, about 1.2%. He won Wisconsin by about half a point, and he won Michigan by almost 3 points. Meanwhile, winning Georgia by 0.3, the closest one, and again, about 11,000 votes. Trump won Wisconsin by about a point, so a point and a half shift. He won Michigan by about a point and a half, as a lot of people believe that Arab and Muslim voters abandoned the Harris campaign, punishing her and Biden for their support of Israel during the Gaza war, and either did not vote, voted for Jill Stein, the third-party Green candidate, or voted for Trump out of spite, as Trump continues to promise to end international wars. Perhaps that war in Gaza includes that. So, Michigan, if you look at it, Trump has about a 4.5 point swing there. Nevada, he wins by 3 points. Biden won Nevada by 2.5. So did Hillary Clinton. Trump has become the first Republican since 2004 to win the popular vote. That was George W. Bush, but also the first Republican since 2004 to win Nevada. At the same time, other blue-leaning swing states like New Mexico, Virginia, these aren't really swing states, but these are states that, if you look at the map, Biden won comfortably, 11, 7, and 10, respectively. Trump got within 6, 5, and 5.2. So these states all got a lot closer. And another example is many people believe Trump is expanding the map. States like Illinois, reliably Democrat, voted for Biden by 17 points. Trump got it within 9. New York voted for Biden by 23. Trump got it within 13. Or sorry, that's 11.5. So these states have all swung to the right considerably all throughout the country. New Hampshire got close. Maine got close. So these blue states that are lean, likely blue states, Trump got it closer. Every single state shifted to the right. Some by a great deal, like Texas. Some by almost nothing, like Washington. Harris won it by 18. Biden won it by 20, by 19. So not really that much of a shift, but every single one of these states, even blue shifting states like Colorado, shifted back towards Trump this time around. So the Republicans did very well because of this. It helped them win Senate seats. They were expected to win Montana and West Virginia and flip those seats, but they also won Ohio and Pennsylvania. They got really close in Michigan, really close in Wisconsin, and a lot closer than they should have in Arizona and New Mexico and Nevada. And yet, so the Republicans have done pretty well. They're gaining 4 seats, and these numbers are close, as are the presidential results. And I've talked about on the channel how historically this is not a blowout. There is no reason to call this a blowout. But in the relatively politically polarized culture that we live in, this is a pretty convincing win for Trump and the Republicans who are riding his coattails. In the House, they'll probably get about 220 to 225 to the Democrats, who will get about 205 to 215, 210 to 215. So this is big news. This is obviously very historic news. This historic election where Joe Biden dropped out, the first woman of color was nominated as the presidential candidate, sees a president who is the only president in history to be convicted of a felony, make one of the greatest political comebacks of all time. Nobody expected this to happen on January 7th, 2021, after the January 6th riot or insurrection, depending on where you're coming from. People blamed Trump for that. They held him liable for that. And yet Trump not only won, he won in convincing fashion. Again, sweeping those swing states. Again, all the states shifted to the right. And again, getting blue states a lot closer. So this has a lot of Republican analysts excited because in the future, they foresee states like Minnesota, Illinois, Virginia, New Mexico, New Jersey, and even maybe the big giant empire state of New York, which has 28 electoral votes, shifting towards Trump. And if you haven't heard me explain electoral votes before, I'll explain on the channel. Let me explain it now. So this is the state of Iowa. There was a poll that came out, by the way, that said that Trump would lose by 3 points. He won by 13.5. So once again, the polls severely underestimated Donald Trump, and he was able to win convincingly because of that, or at least get very close like he did in 2020. For instance, Minnesota, there was a poll that had him up by 10. This was the home state of Tim Walz, and he got about 4 points away from winning. And Walz was Harris's vice president, of course. So in Iowa, if you look at it, every state in the union, the founders set it up this way, have 2 senators. In Nebraska, for instance, they filled both of those seats. But there's 2 senators in each state. In Iowa, there are 4 House districts, and it looks like the Republicans will win all 4 of them. Okay? So you take the total number of congressional districts plus the total number of senators, 4 and 2, and that gets 6 electoral votes. California, 52 congressional districts and 2 senators, and senators are almost never up for re-election at the same time, but Adam Schiff, for instance, won against Steve Garvey, the baseball player, in California. So 2 senators, and the total number, you add the 2 senators plus the total number of congressional districts, and you have a total number, 54 electoral votes for 52 congressional districts plus 2 senators. New York has 28, and if it becomes a swing state, that's a big win for the Republicans. Meanwhile, the old swing states like Ohio and Florida have become solidly Republican, and Iowa as well. Ohio, Trump won by almost 11 and a half points, which is about the same amount he lost New York by. So New York voted just barely to the left of a red trending state like Ohio. Florida, Trump won by 13. Texas, he won by almost 14. Bigger margins than in New York, which means the idea from Democrats that they could turn Texas blue or bring Florida back into a swing state category, which it's been trending red for the last decade, really, really fell on deaf ears, and New York is now a state that they may not need to look at in the future. And the more Trump expands the map and brings up swing states, the more any candidate does this, really, the more it causes the other party to panic because they have to put money into states that they didn't expect to have to do so. So in the future, Republicans will be targeting places like New Mexico, Virginia, New Hampshire, Maine, New Jersey, and maybe even New York a little bit. And that'll force the Democrats to have to pay attention there instead of states like North Carolina or Georgia, swing states they really want to win over. So basically, what does this mean historically? Well, we don't know what Trump's going to do in his second term, but we have seen once again that in the recent trends in American history, Americans do not want to stay. Want to be able to change things. There was a record number of people, over 70%, who believe America was on the wrong track, and the party in power almost always loses when that many Americans believe America is in decline, and that was the case. And Trump has a Senate that has a decent amount of Republicans in it for this polarized times, and a House that has, again, a decent number of Republicans, and assuming he can kind of keep them voting along with him, he can get a lot of his policies done, and he's already moving to fill out his cabinet. He selected Elise Stefanik to be his UN secretary. He has selected Lee Zeldin, who ran for New York, and is one of the reasons New York is getting closer and closer, a popular Republican from New York. Zeldin is going to be the head of the Environmental Protection Agency. Trump has also selected Tom Homan, the controversial head of the USCIS, to be his border czar, which is ironic because a lot of people saw Kamala Harris in that role and thought she didn't do a good job at it. And a state like Arizona and Texas, which is on the border, voted more to the right, probably because of that issue really hurting Democrats. And based on the results from different groups, Republicans did better than they have with African Americans and Latinos than ever before, especially among men. As Trump got close to winning Latino men, he won about a quarter of black men, which is unheard of for Republicans. Blacks usually vote 90 to 95% Democrat. And black men have been trending to the right, and that's really helped Trump. Meanwhile, that made up for gains that canceled out gains made by Harris and the Democrats among white college-educated people, particularly among white college-educated women who view abortion as an issue that they care about, where the Democrats are strong. So when it came to issues such as immigration, inflation, the economy, and foreign policy, those voters who were prioritizing that tended to vote for Trump, while voters who prioritized abortion, democracy, and healthcare tended to vote for Harris. And so the country is extremely divided. Make no mistake, this is a close election by all accounts and would have been a close election 30, 40 years ago, but we don't see blowouts like this. We haven't seen a real convincing, overwhelming blowout in American politics since probably 2008, and before then, 1984 is the last major one. In 2008 with Barack Obama was a solid one, but it's not an overwhelming one. So that's where we are with this election. Donald Trump not only wins and wins convincingly, he also does better than my prediction had him doing, as he wins Michigan and Nevada by much bigger margins, Georgia by a bigger margin than I expected, and Texas and Florida and Iowa by bigger margins than I expected, as well as Ohio and Arizona. And a bunch of these Democratic states were still solidly blue, but they were closer than we had expected them to be, which not only expands the map, but totally countermands what happened to Trump in 2020. I mean, look at these states. Biden's basically doubling up Trump in every single one of them, and Trump got a lot closer in many of these. New Jersey, I showed you, is 5 points for Harris. Well, look at this; it's about 16 points for Biden. So last time around, so the Republicans really hit the mother load for now, at least. And the question is, how many House seats will they be able to get when it's all said and done? But it looks like they'll be able to hold on to the House, which a lot of people a month ago thought they would lose the House, take the Senate, and the presidency was a coin toss. A lot of people expected the election to be close, and up until recently, people expected Harris to win. But the betting markets and social media, such as X and Facebook, we're talking more about a Trump victory, and X knew about the victory. People on X knew about that Trump was going to win hours before the news was calling it, which also indicates that, mixed with the fact that their polls were significantly off and underestimating Trump once again, that the mainstream media has a problem on its hands. It can continue to report things, but people, for instance, this CBS article, people knew this well before it actually happened. People knew Trump was going to win all seven battleground states on Tuesday night. And the fact that we knew he was going to win on Tuesday night gave us a good example of how strong a win it is for Trump, especially in this polarized climate. So, anyways, that's a historian's analysis. I hope you've enjoyed the election, and I hope you've enjoyed this these This Week in Politics videos. This is the long form one, kind of a in celebration. I won't be talking about it anytime soon unless I see something that I really want to analyze from a historical perspective. But this has been a historian analyzing this very historic election, where we saw the first woman of color nominated by either major party for president. We saw a president who was convicted of a felony come back and become the second president ever to win two non-consecutive terms. We saw perhaps the greatest political comeback following the January 6th incident, riot, insurrection, whatever you want to call it. And again, my prediction had Trump winning, and I said on the live streams that I expected him to win, but I did not expect such a strong win by Trump, and so he deserves kudos for that. The Harris ground game, the Harris get out the vote efforts seemingly kind of fell behind Trump and everything. So there's a lot to really analyze and look at, but it looks like we have President Trump for 4 more years. We have a House and Senate that will probably be controlled by the Republicans for at least 2 of those years. The House, I would predict, is going to go back and forth between Republicans and Democrats because look at how close these margins are. However, everyone is saying the Senate will be, the Republicans will be able to hold on to these seats and other seats that are coming up in 2026. So Trump will have probably at least one chamber of Congress under his belt for all of his 4 years. And his presidency, his second presidency, will be focused more on what he calls draining the swamp, government, cleaning up what he considers to be government corruption. There will be more isolationism and protectionism with the tariff policies that he wants to go back to, thinking that those worked 120 years ago, which they did to some extent, but not always. But he thinks they can work now in a modernized global economy. We'll see. It's going to be a tall order, but Trump's already looking to clean house and get a lot done. And he's already being very proactive in that regard. So we'll see exactly what this means. As for Kamala Harris and the Democrats, I would not want them to panic because political comebacks are possible. This is kind of where Trump was a few years ago, and look at where he's come to now. They have every chance to come back and win in 2028, as does Vice President Harris. Trump obviously lost in 2020, and plenty of presidential candidates have lost the first time around and come back and won a second time. So who knows where she will land. A lot of people think she will run for governor of California. She's obviously popular enough in that state. California is a solidly blue state. She's well known in California. She was the district attorney in San Francisco, the attorney general, the first African-American female senator from California, and of course also vice president representing California on the national stage. So we will see what is in store for her. It looks to be the end of President Biden's political career. He is in his 80s there, and will probably continue to be a guide on the side, commenting and writing, as many former presidents do. But Donald Trump, who is now also, speaking of age, the oldest elected president in U.S. history, just a little bit older than Biden was in 2020, will be the oldest president in office by the time he leaves in 2029, and we'll see what America looks like. Obviously, the most important fact isn't the 2025-2029 Trump presidency. The most important part is what happens in the dash between 2025 and 2029. And we'll just have to stick around and see. And if it's historical enough or has some sort of significance, you'll be hearing me talk about it. But I really appreciate you guys listening, and really thank you for following along with the channel and everything. Make sure to like, subscribe, hit the notification. Trying to hit 6,000 by the end of the year. Your patronage and support, comments, and feedback all helps the channel grow. And congratulations once again to President Trump, elected in pretty convincing fashion, especially for this day and age, to be the 47th President of the United States. We will see what happens next. Take care and have a great rest of your Veterans Day.